Chapter 2, Josie, 1935. Josie took one last look toward the west. The sun quietly gave up and invited cold February darkness to take over. She stepped into her snug cabin, grateful the evening chores were done. The savory aroma of ham and beans simmering on the back of the cook stove greeted her. The warmth and safety cozy cabin enveloped her. Rubbing her hands together, Josie made a slow pirouette in the warmth radiating from the wood-burning cook stove. After hanging her heavy woolen coat on a wooden peg, she struck a match to the lamp wick. Sighing in relief, she pulled off her stocking cap and scrubbed her hands vigorously through her short hair. Her busy hands loosened black curls, setting them free from the snarled mat caused by her tight head covering. The winding body of Pansy twirled around her overall-covered legs. Josie picked up the large yellow cat. "You, my sweet kitty, will get ham for supper." Pansy looked at her with half-closed amber eyes and purred his gratitude. Henny Penny clucked softly from her box near the stove. "You've had all you need for the day, my fine feathered friend. There will be cracked corn for you in the morning." Setting the cat down and digging deep in her overall pocket, Josie frowned as her hand encountered the envelope she had picked up from the post office earlier. Touching the crinkled paper sent cold shivers down her spine that had nothing to do with the bitter weather outside. Her shudders battled with the hot blood surging to her face. She drew the letter out and read the words once again. Why would anyone write something so hateful? "Hey, you little bitch. Bet you thought I'd forgot you 'cause I ain't wrote you in a month or more. I will haunt you for the rest of your days. I will tell the world your ma was a whore. No decent man will ever have you. I will make your life as bad as you made mine." Tearing the hated paper in pieces, she lifted the trivet off the cook range and threw them into the fire. She closed her eyes and breathed in the smell of burning paper. With satisfaction, she watched the thin wisp of smoke twist and disappear. Moments later, she replaced the trivet, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, and squared her shoulders. "How long, Pansy? How long will it take the people in this town to forget Mama? When will I be a person in my own right? I'm sick and tired of being known as a whore's daughter." Pansy's persistent meows hastened Josie to pick up a small stoneware crock from the floor. She set it on the stove near the beans and searched the depths of the pot for pieces of ham. "Just look around. This is Josie Kelly." Blowing on bits of meat before placing in the dish, she swept her arms around the one-room cabin and indicated the polished floorboards and floor wallpaper. "And look at all of my books." She pointed to the shelves holding her most precious possessions. "Would a whore's daughter read a wall full of books?" Josie blew on the ham pieces again before she set them on the floor. "Be careful. It's hot." Pansy nosed the bowl cautiously. The young woman filled herself a bowl of beans, buttered a slice of fresh bread, and sat down at her kitchen table. Pansy daintily picked at his ham pieces, and beady-eyed Henny Penny kept guard on the room. The soft, sizzling Aladdin lamp and the occasional shifting of wood burning in the stove were the only sounds in the room. Following her usual habit, Josie picked up the book lying on the table. It was Volume 4 of the Lives and Loves of Gloria Goodley. The glamorous heroine had bravely traveled alone to Africa to save the orangutans. Currently, the courageous woman was deep in the jungles of Africa, being pursued by an English nobleman. Even though the novel was compelling, Josie found herself distracted. She closed her eyes and frowned. Could she continue to blame Mama and her profession for her own anxieties, for her fear of leaving the small, safe world she had created for herself? Mama left when Josie was 13. No, Mama abandoned her only child when Josie was 13. She had lived alone and cared for herself for 8 years. Josie would never forget that night or the following morning when she woke to find Mama gone. She closed her eyes and let the memories flow. She'd been finishing the last of the dishes when she heard the knock on the door. Mama had started drinking early. "You run along, baby," she splurred from her perch in the middle of her unmade brass bed. She waved her fingernail brushed in the general direction of the attic ladder. "This just might be the one." Molly returned to painting her toenails. "He's swell." Quickly, following the pattern set years before, Josie gathered her book and Pansy before climbing the ladder to her attic room. She slid the trapdoor in place, scratched a match on the side of its box, and lit the lamp's wick. While Josie dressed for bed, she heard the usual sounds, the deep rumble of a male voice, Mama's high-pitched giggle, and the squeak of bed springs. Josie put on her earmuffs and read her book. The next morning started much like all others. Josie refused to enjoy the convenience of keeping a chamber pot in her room, so she lay on her cot, wishing she had not drank so much tea the night before. Would it be necessary to climb out the attic window and use the rope ladder to get to the privy? Or would Mama's customer be gone so she could use the loft ladder to the main floor of the cabin? Pansy's plaintive cry as he circled the square trapdoor motivated her to rise from her cot. Josie slowly slid the door to the side, allowing a frantic Pansy to scramble down the ladder. It was quiet. Too quiet. There was no heavy breathing from alcohol-induced sleep. When the trap door was fully open, she had a clear view of the ornate brass and iron bedstead below. The bed was empty. Warily she descended and went to Mama's wardrobe. It was empty. The cabin was empty. Mama was gone. Josie opened the door to allow the cat to find relief, then sank to the ground. Somehow she had gotten through the day and the next week and the next years. Josie stared out of the window into the dark void. A coyote yipped nearby. "Well, that settles that, young man," she said to the large feline. "I know you like to tomcat around, but you'll have to stay in tonight. That mean boy sounded way too close." She frowned and rubbed her hand down Pansy's sleek coat, enjoying the vibration of his purring. "You know Pansy 1 was killed by a coyote." The coyote yipped again, closer this time. Anger surged. Josie put the cat down and picked up the ancient shotgun standing near the cabin entrance. She stood in the open doorway. Heedless of the bitter air, she pointed the gun into the night sky, cocked the hammer, and pulled the trigger. Boom! When she recovered from the recoil, she braced her back on the doorframe and pulled the second trigger. "Take that, you mangy, good-for-nothing, egg-sucking, cat-killing creature from hell!" Josie yelled into the night before coming in and shutting the door. "Oh, my goodness, that felt good," she said to the room. Josie replaced the shotgun and swished her hands together in a gesture denoting a job well done. Henny Penny clucked her displeasure. Feathers ruffled. The chicken drilled Josie with her bright eyes. Josie giggled at the indignant fowl's reaction as she waddled back to her box. "Hush yourself, chicken. Where's Pansy?" A shudder of fear went down Josie's back. She started toward the door just before hearing a plaintive meow from the direction of the brass bed. "Oh, thank goodness, Pansy. I thought you had slipped out while I had the door open." She carried the lamp to the bedstead and put it on the floor. On hands and knees, she flipped back the edge of the quilt. "Oh, Pansy, I'm sorry I scared you, but I'll bet I scared that old devil Coyote more." "Did I ever tell you about the first Pansy? I was 5 years old, and she was just a kitten. I was sitting on the porch, and Pansy 1 crawled out from under the porch and right into my lap. When Mama came out and saw him, she started oohing and awing. I asked her if I could keep him, and she said, 'Only if he's a boy.' I told her he was, but he was so cute, he had to have a girl's name. Mama held him up and looked at his belly. 'I don't know how you can tell,' she said, 'but you can't have a girl cat around making a bunch of babies and all.'" Josie paused and shook her head sadly. "A coyote got Pansy 1. That's one of the reasons I hated them old buggers so much. But you're safe in this cabin, so come on out from under there, scaredy cat." Pansy peered at her with unblinking yellow eyes, his fur standing on edge, forming a ridge along his back. Josie lay down and slid under the bed until she could catch the cat's shuddering body. "You can't stay hidden the rest of your life, you know." Truth hit her like bitter on persimmon. She gasped and her head jerked up, striking a wooden bed slab. Josie rubbed her head. "Holy Hannah, Pansy, I'm as frightened as you are. I hide too. I hide in this cabin. I hide in these detestable overalls. I'm a scaredy cat. I'm afraid of the men in Allenville, the way they look at me. I hide here from the women who pull the children away as if I would contaminate them. I hide in here to escape the shame brought on by Mama's occupation. I hide so I don't have to endure the whispers and the pointing fingers." The floor was cold, but she didn't feel it. She ran her hands down the feline's trembling body. "Look at me, Pansy. Look at these baggy overalls. I'm a woman wearing men's clothing, and to tell you the truth, I'm getting sick and tired of it. The whole town knows I'm a girl, but I still hide behind these overalls. I'm afraid of Sly Cunningham and his nasty letters," she confessed to the cat who had begun to purr. "I'm afraid of the anger simmering inside of me." "Did I ever tell you about the time Sly's son, Sam, spied on me from a crack in the walls of my privy?" Pansy's purr became a low rumble as he moved closer, encouraging Josie's confidences. "It wasn't long after Mama left. I just sat down in the old privy. You know, the one with the cracks big enough to see through. Then I heard snickering. All I could do was finish. When I stepped out, he was waiting for me. "I knowed it! I knowed it!" he screamed. "Pa was right. You ain't no boy." "Pansy." He danced around like he had ants in his pants. I'll never forget his smile. It was plumb wicked. He pointed his finger at me and yelled, "You Mama's whore. You a whore too?" Oh, Pansy, I'll never know how I was able to do it, but I stood there and smiled when I asked him, "Why don't you come out here and find out?" Mama always said it hurts a man something fierce if you hit him in his privates. Oh, Pansy, you should have seen. When he got close enough and was reaching out his arms, my knee, I hit him between the legs. While he was bending over, holding himself, I doubled up my fist and punched him in the nose. I'll swear I never saw anything like it. His face turned white as snow, his nose was bleeding, and he bawled like a wounded calf. Well, I cried too, but he didn't see me. He was too busy limping away. Of course, he was screaming terrible things back at me. Josie smiled at the memory. For long moments, the only sound in the room was Pansy's rumbling purr. Hanging on to the cat, Josie squirmed out from under the bed. To holy dad burn, holy heck, was Samuel Cunningham and all the young men who taunted her. She wasn't going to hide any longer. She knew the answer. It was lying in the kindling box. Suddenly, everything was clear. It was so good to make a decision. Josie deposited Pansy on the bed and carried the lamp back to the kitchen table. She would have waltzed to the kindling box if she knew how to dance and wasn't wearing clumpy boots. There it was, just as she had left it this morning, in the Allenville Beacon, opened to the classified ads. Josie carried the crinkled paper to the kitchen table and smoothed it out. Widow offers respectable marriage, a private room, and monthly allowance in return for the care of his 4-year-old daughter and infant son. Applicant must be in good health. Some domestic chores will be expected. I will furnish references, and we will expect the same from anyone who applies for this position. If interested, write to Post Office, Box 970, Bethany, Missouri. This morning, when she read the advertisement, she closed her eyes and for just a little while allowed herself to dream of having a family, an infant to snuggle and rock and sing to, a husband who loved and respected her, a little girl to dress in pretty clothes and ribbons and bows. She would teach her to make cookies and fudge. But the old feelings of doubt and insecurity took over. It was here, her safe, right here in this cabin. Marrying a stranger, being a mama, was an impossible dream. She wadded the paper into a ball and tossed it in the kindling box. Thoughtfully, she moved to the lamp on the table until she could see her reflection in the window. Short black curls framed her heart-shaped face. Laura said she was pretty, but Laura was her good friend and had to say that. Josie frowned at the pale reflection. Her green eyes, encased in sooty lashes, looked overly large. She turned her head, trying for a side view. Was her nose too small, turned up too much? It sounded as if the widower wouldn't care much what she looked like. He was offering a private room. She certainly didn't know much about marriage, but it sounded like he wasn't interested in what her books called marital relations. That didn't make sense. Mama said she made men happy, and that meant marital relations, didn't it? Mama should know, for goodness sakes. It had been her business to make men happy. Would she miss having marital relations? My land, if it made men happy, wouldn't it make a woman happy too? The book about the Catholic religion said intercourse was for procreation. The widower had already procreated. Maybe she could talk him into sharing a bed and procreating some more. It would be easy to love the little girl and the baby. Surely she had enough love to go around for more children. What would Gloria say about the situation? Josie looked over at the latest Gloria novel. The knowledgeable heroine knew everything about romance. Every man who looked at her fell in love. Even in Africa, while she was saving orangutans, she had met an English earl who wanted to marry her. My land sakes, if Gloria could go clear to Africa by herself, Josie could leave the safety of her home to go 50 miles to Bethany. No one would know her. She would find happiness with a husband and children, a family of her own. She loved her cabin, her cow, chickens, and sheep. She loved the 4 wonderful lady friends in her life, but she needed something more. Hell's bells. She was 21 years old, practically an old maid. She was ready for a man. It was time she left the stifling confines of the town full of people who spit on her. She longed for a place where she could walk down the street and smile at those she met. They would smile back and say, "Good morning." What would it be like to wear a dress, to feel it flapping against her calves as she walked down the street, to feel air on her legs? No more hiding. She would write to Post Office 970. Then she would go through her book catalog and find a volume that explained everything one should know about pleasing a man and caring for children. A book on anatomy and baby care would come in handy. Her decision firmly in place, Josie smiled in satisfaction, joy taking the place of indecision. She got out her paper and pencil and waited for the words to come that would convince the widower she was one he wanted.